I'm 34, and if you'd asked me a year ago what my biggest secret was, I probably would have said something dumb like, I lied about finishing that book for book club. But that was before I opened a letter that was never supposed to be mine. That was before I found out my entire life had been built on a lie someone else told, and that someone might be me. It all started last December, the week before Christmas. I'd gone home to visit my parents in Michigan. Every year it's the same routine: tacky ornaments, peppermint cocoa, my dad burning the ham. I usually look forward to it, but this time, something felt off. My mom was distracted, quiet. My dad kept checking the front window like he was expecting someone. I figured maybe they were fighting, or maybe it was just the holiday stress. On the second night, a blizzard rolled in. We were stuck inside, so I offered to help my mom clear out the basement, something she'd been saying she'd get to for years. Mostly it was junk: old Christmas lights, cracked VHS tapes, a dusty box of my high school trophies no one cared about, and then I found the envelope. It was tucked between two photo albums, yellowed with age. No return address, just my mom's name on the front, written in handwriting I didn't recognize. I shouldn't have opened it, I know that, but something about it made my heart race. It wasn't sealed, just folded, and when I opened it, my whole world shifted, because the letter inside didn't start with Dear Mom's name. It started with, She looks just like you, and it was about me. I read the letter once, then again, then a third time. It was short, maybe half a page, written in what looked like black ink, the handwriting neat but emotional. Whoever wrote it clearly didn't expect anyone else to read it. Definitely not me. It said, She looks just like you. I saw the school photo you sent, and I swear, for a second I thought you'd sent a picture of yourself as a child. She has your eyes, your chin. I know I gave up my rights. I don't regret it, not if it meant she'd be safe, but I still think about her. Every birthday, every Christmas. I just want to know if she's okay. That's all. Please write back. I must have sat there in that freezing basement for 10 minutes just staring at the page. My brain couldn't even form questions fast enough. What the hell was this? Who was M? And more importantly, who were they talking about? She looks just like you. That line kept echoing in my head. It couldn't be about me, right? But the envelope had my mom's name on it, and the photo albums it was hidden between, they were mine. Baby photos, first day of school, Halloween costumes. The context was loud and clear. This person, whoever they were, thought I was their daughter. At first I tried to rationalize. Maybe it was about someone else, a family friend's kid, a distant cousin. But the more I looked at the letter, the less sense that made. And then I turned the envelope over and saw the postmark, 1995. I was 4 years old when this letter arrived. That's when I started shaking. I went back upstairs trying to act normal, letter folded and shoved in my hoodie pocket. My parents were in the living room, the fireplace crackling, Bing Crosby playing on the radio. Everything looked normal, cozy, safe, but I couldn't stop staring at my dad. That night, after they went to bed, I snuck into the attic. I don't know what I thought I'd find. I'd never cared about my birth certificate before. I just assumed it was in the filing cabinet like everything else. The drawer marked records. It was missing a lot more than I expected. No hospital, no trace of my early life, but just a typed document labeled Adoption Decree. My name was on it, but so were two others, and neither of them. I sat on the attic floor, paper in my hands, heart pounding. It wanted out. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the document. It wasn't some form letter or a mistake. This was a legal record, black and white, signed, stamped, official, and on it, plain as day, adoption finalized, October 1995. My name was there, so was my birth date, but the names under biological parents? Two total strangers. The man listed as my father wasn't the one who taught me to ride a bike. It wasn't the man who sat through my dance recitals, or screamed from the bleachers at every soccer game. No, it was someone named Michael Thomas Renner, age 26, at the time of the filing. I didn't recognize the name at all, and my mom? Well, that name was the same. Same middle name, same signature. But it wasn't just listed under biological, it was under petitioner too. My mom had adopted me. My own mother had legally adopted me. It didn't make sense. I couldn't make the pieces fit. Why would my biological mother need to adopt me? Unless she wasn't. Unless I wasn't hers to begin with. Unless both names on my birth certificate were strangers. I sat there in the attic, in the dark, my whole identity splitting at the seams. Was I adopted? If so, who were my real parents? And why had no one ever told me? More importantly, what the hell were they hiding? I didn't sleep that. I just laid in bed, staring at the ceiling while the wind howled outside, thinking about every moment that didn't quite add. The way my dad always changed the subject. I asked questions about when I was born, the fact that there were no baby footage too, the random woman I was 7 who asked if I was Claire and then backtracked fast when my dad showed. At the time, I thought she's just confused. Maybe not. By morning, I had a plan. I didn't confront my parents. I didn't want them to lie to my face. Not yet. First, I needed proof, and I had a place to start. Michael Thomas Renner. Whoever he was, he wrote that letter, and according to the adoption file, he was my biological father. The name haunted me all night. Michael Thomas Renner. I ran it through every people search site I could find. There were too many hits. The name was common, but paired with a rough age, he'd be in his 50s now, and the location stamp from the letter, a suburb 2 hours from my parents' house. I narrowed it down to 3 possibilities. Only one still lived in Michigan. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I said I was driving into town to clear my head, maybe do some last-minute shopping. In reality, I took a rented car and drove 2 hours north to a neighborhood that looked like it hadn't changed in 30 years. Same rusty mailboxes, same bare trees leaning into the wind like they were tired. I was expecting an older man, someone gray-haired and quiet, someone who might deny everything. But when I pulled up to the address, an older woman answered the door. She looked me up and down like she was trying to place me, and then froze. Her hand went to her mouth, and she just stood there, silent. I introduced myself by first name only and asked if Michael Renner lived there. She didn't respond right away. Then she whispered like she was afraid someone else would hear, "Are you her daughter?" I swear my knees nearly gave out. She opened the door wider and let me in. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and cigarette smoke, old couches, faded carpet, photos on the wall with faces I didn't recognize, except one. On the side table was a picture of a young man in his 20s, with dark hair and a familiar, serious gaze. My eyes, my chin, my everything. She said his name like it hurt her to say it. Michael. He was her son, and he was dead. Died 10 years ago in a motorcycle accident. Never married, no other children, but he did have a girlfriend once. A serious one, a girl named Claire, my mother. According to her, Claire got pregnant at 19. Michael wanted to raise the baby, me, but Claire's parents were against it. Said they were too young, too unstable. Michael's mom told me that my mom disappeared for months after giving birth. When she reappeared, she told Michael she was giving the baby up for adoption, that it was what's best. He was devastated. He begged her to change her mind, but she refused. The last time they ever spoke was the day she handed him a single photo of me, as a toddler. He wrote that letter a few months later, and never got a response. I asked if she still had the photo. She did. It was me, sitting in the grass, clapping my hands, wearing a red dress I remembered from a box in our garage. It had been mine. My mother did keep it. Michael's mom took my hand, told me she always wondered what happened to the little girl in that photo. She never had any other grandchildren, just me. She called me her granddaughter. I didn't know what to say. I think I cried. Before I left, she said something that chilled me. She said Claire didn't just give me up to a stranger. She gave me to someone she already knew. The name haunted me all night. Michael Thomas Renner. I ran it through every people search site I could find. There were too many hits. The name was common, but paired with a rough age, he'd be in his 50s now, and the location stamp from the letter, a suburb 2 hours from my parents' house. I narrowed it down to 3 possibilities. Only one still lived in Michigan. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I said I was driving into town to clear my head, maybe do some laps. In reality, I drove 2 hours. Same rusty same bare trees leaning into the wind. I was expecting someone. But when I pulled up to the address, an older woman answered the door. She looked me up and down like she was trying to place me, and then froze. Her hand went to her mouth, and she just stood there, silent. I introduced myself by first name only and asked if Michael Renner lived there. She didn't respond right away. Then she whispered, like she was afraid someone else would hear, "Are you her daughter?" I swear my knees nearly gave out. She opened the door wider and let me in. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and cigarette smoke, old couches, faded carpet, photos on the wall with faces I didn't recognize, except one. On the side table was a picture of a young man in his 20s, with dark hair and a familiar, serious gaze. My eyes, my chin, my everything. She said his name like it hurt her to say it. Michael. He was her son, and he was dead. Died 10 years ago in a motorcycle accident. Never married, no other children. But he did have a girlfriend once. A serious one. A girl named Claire, my mother. According to her, Claire got pregnant at 19. Michael wanted to raise the baby, me, but Claire's parents were against it. Said they were too young, too unstable. Michael's mom told me that my mom disappeared for months after giving birth. When she reappeared, she told Michael she was giving the baby up for adoption, that it was what's best. He was devastated. He begged her to change her mind, but she refused. The last time they ever spoke was the day she handed him a single photo of me, as a toddler. He wrote that letter a few months later and never got a response. I asked if she still had the photo. She did. It was me, sitting in the grass, clapping my hands, wearing a red dress I remember from a box in our garage. It had been mine. My mother did. Michael's mom took my hand, told me what happened in that photo. She never had any, just me. She called me her granddaughter. I didn't know what to say. I think I cried. Before I left, she said something that chilled me. She said Claire didn't just give me up to a stranger. She gave me to someone she already knew. I drove home in a fog. The photo burned into my memory. The red dress, the smile, the man whose face lived on in mine. Michael Renner wasn't just some name on a document. He was real. He wanted me. He tried to be in my life, and my mother cut him out. But what haunted me more was that last thing his mom said. Claire didn't give me to a stranger. She gave me to someone she already knew. Back home, my parents were sitting at the table like nothing had changed. Like everything was still wrapped in bows and Christmas music and cinnamon candles. I waited until my dad left the room. Then I sat across from my mother and said one word. Michael. That's it. Her face went white, lips parted, eyes didn't blink. She didn't ask Michael who. She didn't play dumb. She didn't even deny it. She just whispered, almost like a confession. You found out. The air left the room. I asked her to tell me everything. She hesitated at first, looked toward the hallway like she was afraid my dad would walk back in. Then she leaned forward and set it straight, like it had been sitting in her chest for decades, rotting. She got pregnant at 19. Her parents flipped out. Said if she didn't give the baby up, they'd cut her off. No school, no help, no money. They wanted the whole thing buried. Michael wanted to raise me. She didn't think he could handle it. But instead of going through an agency, she made a private arrangement. That's how she knew a man, someone she'd worked for briefly one summer, a doctor, older, respected. He and his wife couldn't have kids. She gave me to them, but something went. The wife backed out at the last minute. The man, the doctor, refused to return me. He said he'd already signed the paper, claimed it was too late, that the courts would side with him. And my mother, she let it happen. She didn't fight, didn't go to court, didn't tell Michael. She walked away. 2 years later, she met my father. Not the man who raised me, another one, a different man, a better man. But the adoption was already finalized. So they did the next best thing. They kept the lie alive. And for 30 years, no one said a word. I was silent. I didn't know how to respond. There was too much grief, too much betrayal, too many versions of the truth all bleeding into each other. I finally asked her, so, who is the man who raised me? She hesitated again. And then, for the first time in my life, my mother said his name like it was poison. Not my dad, not some stranger. She said, he's not who you think he is. And if you go digging deeper, you'll wish you hadn't. I didn't sleep that night, even move. I laid in bed with the blanket pulled to my chin, eyes fixed on the ceiling, replaying her words over and over. He's not who you think he is. If you go digging deeper, you'll wish you hadn't. That wasn't the voice of someone protecting me. That was the voice of someone protecting themselves. And I already knew I couldn't stop digging. The next morning, I didn't ask my dad anything. I didn't want to tip him off. I just said I needed to get out of the house, grab coffee, clear my head. He smiled like everything was fine, like I hadn't just discovered my entire childhood was built on falsified records and stolen bloodlines. The lie had gone on so long he couldn't even see it anymore. I drove straight to the library downtown, the only place in town with unrestricted internet and a microfilm archive. I knew if I searched from home, he'd see. He was still the admin on the Wi-Fi account. I started with his name, the one I'd written on school papers, Father's Day cards, emergency contact forms. And that's when the cracks started forming. Because when I searched his name in state records, there was nothing. No marriage license, no home purchase, no vehicle registration prior to 1996, a year after I was adopted. It was like the man just appeared, out of nowhere, clean, untraceable. But then I tried something different. I searched the name with aliases, cross-referenced birth dates, former employers, anything that might shake something loose, and I found something. Buried in an old employment record from a hospital in Arizona, I saw a name that was almost identical. Same first and last name, just a different middle initial. Same birthday, same face. The archived employee badge photo was blurry, but it was him. Younger, no beard, still him. But the job title wasn't what I expected. Medical records supervisor, suspended pending investigation. There was a note attached. Employee was placed on administrative leave in 19 due to irregularities in file management and unauthorized access to restricted adoption. I felt sick. The same year I was adopted, I kept digging. Hospital documents, internal memos, and then I found it, a redacted report, partly blacked out, but enough was visible. He'd been caught forging access to sealed adoption files connected to infants born between 1993 and 1994, files that were not his to view, and shortly after that investigation, he resigned, moved across the country, married my mother, and adopted me. Suddenly, everything made sense. He hadn't just adopted me, he'd engineered it. This wasn't a random case of young parents giving up a child. This was a man who found a loophole, who inserted himself into a situation he had no business touching, who stole a child, me, through manipulation, paperwork, and silence. My dad forged his way into my life, and now. But here's the thing that still gives me chills. When I got back to the house that night, he was waiting in the living room, holding my adoption, and he said, "We need to talk." He was sitting in the armchair by the fireplace, like he'd been there for hours. My adoption file was on his lap, open, no smile this time. just his fingers steepled together, mouth tight, jaw clenched. I didn't say a word. I walked in. I shut the door. I sat on the couch across from him. Silence stretched so long it felt like the house might split in half. The only sound was the fire crackling and the faint hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. Then he looked up and asked me a question I didn't expect. What did she tell you? Not, what did you find? Not, why are you upset? Not, let me explain. What did she tell you? As if this was a war between him and my mother, and I'd just picked a side. I told him I knew everything. The adoption, the lies, the hospital records in Arizona, his suspension, the sealed files. I laid it all out, one fact at a time. His eyes never left mine. He didn't flinch, didn't deny any of it. When I mentioned the forgery accusation, he finally spoke. That was never proven. Then he paused and added, I didn't forge anything. I used a clearance someone else left open. Like, that made it better. I asked him how he found my mother, how he even knew about me. He just shook his head and said something that made my skin crawl. Some kids fall through the cracks. I made sure you didn't. He said it like I should be grateful, like I'd been rescued. I asked him flat out, Did you steal me? He looked at me, long and hard, then said, No, I gave you a better life. That's when I knew. He'd never admit it, because in his mind, he hadn't done anything wrong. He hadn't stolen a baby. He'd saved one, raised her, gave her a home, a name, a future. He thought he was the hero, and maybe that's the scariest kind of person, the one who breaks every rule and still believes they're the good guy. I asked him why he never told me, why he let me grow up thinking I was his, believing we shared blood, history, DNA. He said something I'll never forget. I thought if I loved you hard enough, it wouldn't matter. Then he stood up calmly and walked upstairs. No apology, no breakdown, just that one sentence. Like that explained everything. I sat there for hours after he left the room, staring at the file, at my name on those pages. A name that now felt like a stranger's. My entire childhood had been orchestrated by a man who viewed morality as paperwork and parenting as ownership, and the worst part? He still thought I was his. There was one person I hadn't spoken to yet, one person whose name kept echoing in my mind since the day I read that letter in the basement. Michael's mother, my biological grandmother, the only one who ever looked at me and said, You have his eyes. I hadn't told her what I found. Not about my fake adoption, not about the man I called Dad, not even that I was coming back. But 2 days after that night by the fire, I showed up on her porch again, hands shaking, stomach in knots. She opened the door, took one look at me, and said, You know more. We sat down at the same kitchen table, sunlight pouring in through lace curtains. She made coffee she didn't drink. I didn't touch mine either. I told her everything, from the forged files to the secret adoption, to the man who raised me and the conversation I'd had with my mother, every lie, every silence. When I finished, she didn't cry. She just reached into a drawer and pulled out a small metal tin, the kind people keep sewing needles in. Inside wasn't thread, it was letters, dozens of them, all from Michael, all to me. Birthdays, scribbled notes, drawings on napkins. Some of them never sent, some of them returned unopened. He wrote to me every year on my birthday. Some were hopeful. I hope you're in kindergarten now. I bet you love books. Some were heartbreak. If I saw you on the street, would I recognize you? The last one was dated the year before his death, just a few months before the accident that took him. It read, I forgive her. I'll never understand it, but I forgive her. If you ever find this someday, I want you to know, I never stopped waiting for you. I sat there shaking, every wall I'd built in the past week crumbling. Michael never gave up on me. He tried. My grandmother tried. And someone, my mother, my father, maybe both, made sure they never got to me. I asked her if she'd ever tried to contact me directly. She looked away, then said something I didn't expect. I did. Once. When I was 11, she showed up at one of my school plays, sat in the back row, watched me in my paper crown and cardboard robe. After the show, she approached my parents. My dad threatened to call the police, said if she ever came near me again, she'd regret it. She never tried after, just kept writing letters I never received, kept birthdays marked on the calendar, kept my picture on the side table like I'd never left. I asked her the question that had been burning in my chest. Why didn't anyone fight harder for me? She looked me dead in the eye and said, Because he made sure we couldn't. And now I think I finally understood what my mother meant when she said, If you go digging deep, you'll wish you hadn't. Because this wasn't just a lie, it was a cover-up. By the time I got back home, I wasn't shaking and I was cold, focused. I had the letters in my backpack, Michael's words, his drawings, his birthday wish, and the photo of him, the one where he looked like me, was in my pocket, folded tight. I knew I didn't need to say much. I just needed to show her. She was in the kitchen, peeling potatoes like it was any other day, like the world around her wasn't crumbling. My dad wasn't home. It was just the two of us. I stood there watching her, her back to me, her shoulders stiff. Then I said, I saw the letters. She froze. knife hovering in mid-air, then slowly placed it down on the cutting board. She didn't turn around, just said flatly, "So you went to her." Not a question, a statement. I walked over and set the stack of envelopes on the counter. She didn't touch them, didn't even look. I asked her what I needed to ask. Why did you let him do it? Why didn't you fight? Was I a mistake you wanted to forget? And finally, did you ever love me? She sank into a chair like someone had pulled the bones from her body. For the first time since this all started, she looked old, not tired, worn down, like the weight of 30 years was finally catching up. And then she started to talk, not the carefully constructed version I'd been fed before, not the guilt-flavored half-truths. The real story, the one no one wanted me to find. She told me that Michael wasn't the one who didn't want. She was. She had never wanted to be a mother. Not then. Not at 19. She was terrified. Her parents had money, reputation. They told her if she went through with the pregnancy, she'd be disowned. So she hid it, moved away for a semester abroad, gave birth under a fake name. Michael wanted to keep me, desperately, but she refused. She didn't want to be tied to him, didn't want the responsibility. She wanted to forget, and that's when he came in. Not Michael, the man who raised me. He wasn't some random savior. He wasn't even a friend. He was her boss, a doctor at the clinic she worked at part-time during college. Older, respected. He knew about the pregnancy, maybe because she confided in, maybe because he'd found out through hospital gossip. She never told me how exactly it started, only that he offered a way out. "I know someone who can help," he said. He had connections, legal shortcuts, loopholes. She said yes, without thinking too hard. She didn't ask questions, she just wanted it over. He handled everything, the paperwork, the court date, the name change, and then she disappeared from the story. For 2 years, she never saw me, never checked in, just assumed I was out of her life for good. Then she met my dad, again, at a conference. Older now, still powerful, still connected. He told her I was fine, said I was happy, but there was one problem. His wife had left. She couldn't go through with raising me, and suddenly, he had a child, a 2-year-old, and no mother to go with it. So he proposed the unthinkable. They could raise me together. They could start over, pretend none of the past had ever happened. She agreed, not out of love, out of guilt, because somewhere inside her, she knew what she'd done, and she thought being my mother, finally, might make it right. But it didn't, because she never told the truth, never told me who I was, never told Michael. I asked her if she knew he died. She nodded, eyes glassy, said she saw the obituary, didn't go to the funeral. "I didn't deserve to mourn him," she whispered. That was the only thing she got right. I didn't tell my mother goodbye. I packed a bag, walked out the front door, and didn't look back. The photo of Michael, my real father, was tucked inside my jacket. The letters were in my bag. And in my chest, nothing. Just the hollow ache that comes after every truth you never asked for. But there was one thing left to do. I had to face him. The man who orchestrated all of it. The one who built a life on someone else's child. The man I called Dad. He wasn't at home when I got there. I waited, sat in my old bedroom. The one he'd painted blue before I could speak. The one where I learned to read, cry, dream. It felt foreign now, like a set from a life I didn't star in. Hours passed. The sun dipped behind the trees. When I heard the car pull into the driveway, I stood by the door like a ghost waiting to be seen. When he walked in, he didn't even flinch. Didn't ask where I'd been. Didn't ask what I knew. He just sighed. "So, this is it then?" I told him I wasn't there to argue. I didn't want more lies. I just wanted to say what needed saying. To his face. Before I could let go of it all. I told him I knew everything. That he used his position to exploit a scared girl. That he manipulated my adoption. That he shut out my real family. On purpose. He didn't deny any of it. Not a word. He just said, "I gave you the best life I could." I asked him if he ever thought I'd find out. He said, "I knew someday you might, but I hoped you'd understand. And that's what made me sick. Understand? Understand that he took me? That he erased Michael? That he convinced a broken young woman to become a mother just to cover his tracks? No, I wouldn't understand. But I told him something I don't even know if I meant. I don't hate you, but I'm not yours. I never was." He nodded. Not sad, not angry, just accepting, like he'd known this ending was coming all along. Then he reached into his coat pocket and handed me something. A small, folded envelope. Old, yellowed at the edges. My name written in handwriting I didn't recognize. I opened it right there. Inside was a letter. From Michael. The very first one. The one my so-called father had hidden. It said, "I hope someday you find this. I hope someday you know the truth. Not because it's easy, but because it's yours. Whoever raises you, whatever name you're given, don't ever forget that you were wanted. You were never a mistake. You were mine. And even if I'm not in your life, I will never stop loving you from wherever I am. There was no date, no return address, just a fingerprint smudge in the corner. I looked up at the man in front of me, the man who buried that letter, who stole everything that came after, and I told him the only thing that mattered: you don't get to speak for my past anymore. And then I left. No screaming, no slamming doors, just silence. It's been 6 months. I changed my last name. I moved out of state. I met Michael's cousin, someone who remembers holding me as a baby. We had coffee. She cried. I didn't. I visit his grave now. Leave letters. Sometimes I sit for hours, saying nothing, just existing in the space where he should have been. People ask me if I'm okay. I say yes. I'm not. But I'm getting there. Some wounds don't scar right away. Some identities don't rebuild overnight. But this is my story now. Not the one someone gave me. Not the one I was told. Mine. And I'm finally starting to believe that's enough.